Right, let's get to work. Take a moment to settle into your seat and find your breath. You know what to do. You can work in this practice with your eyes closed or open. Eyes closed is easier. Eyes open can be a bit more of a challenge, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's up to you. And when you are ready, simply attend to the sounds that you hear in the world around you. Depending on where you are set, where you are practicing, there may be quite a lot of noisy sounds, or there may not be very many sounds at all. But there will be something being heard, even if it is just that hum of silence, or the buzzing of your fridge in the distance. Whatever the case may be, notice that your space of hearing is automatically full of whatever there is being heard. You cannot help but hear the next thing that you hear. You cannot unhear a thing that you have heard, and you cannot make a sound linger longer than it will, and unless you move around and do stuff, you probably cannot make a sound stop before it is done. At the same time, you don't have to do any work for this whole hearing thing to happen. In a very real way, you are not doing it, even though it is a verb, which we tend to assume needs somebody to drive it, but it is happening all by itself. Hearing. And each new sound that you hear, or a different aspect of a sound, is a moment of hearing, regardless of what it is that is being heard. Notice this. There is hearing going on, and this hearing is being known. Take a moment to play around in this space of hearing. Notice that it has a spatial property. You can locate sounds, left, right, top, bottom, front, back, far, near. You can even attend to the space segmentally and notice that curiously to the right of you there is silence, while to the left there is the noise of traffic outside. Take a moment to simply follow your attention as it moves around, as it naturally does, across the different arisings in this space of hearing. And when you are ready, without doing anything special at all, turn your attention inward. You might imagine physically placing your attention in the space in between your ears, and realize that along with all of these sounds and noises, you're hearing things that don't seem to come from the world around you. In other words, you are hearing things inside your head. There is mental talk, thoughts, or otherwise mental sounds going on, conversations going on in your head, thoughts being spoken in your inside voice for some reason. Attend to this. Notice that your space of hearing includes the internal hearing as well. See if you can spot the next thought, whether you spot it the moment it arises, or when you're already well in the middle of it, or when it has just gone by. Notice this. Realize that the thought, "I'm not quite sure what he's talking about," or the thought, "I'm listening but not really hearing anything," is a thought that you have just heard. Your internal mental talk can be quite tricky in the beginning. And this is simply because we don't actually train our attention to listen very closely or very clearly. And so you will notice that your thoughts are somewhat vague and unfinished. There is generally an assumption going on that you know what you mean. So while you might catch a couple words here and there, you hardly hear a complete sentence. But it is there. You might also notice that the landscape of your mental talk seems to have different levels. There are thoughts that are quite obvious. There are thoughts that are so obvious, so on the surface that we don't even notice them. Such as the thought, I am listening to this space of hearing, but I am failing to hear clear and crisp thoughts. That's a thought. But then there are also thoughts that are far more vague, silent. Some of them are not even a whisper, but almost like a rumbling stream going on at the bottom of your mind, if you will. Notice this. See if you can catch the next thought the moment it arises, and see if you can attend to it as clearly as you can until it becomes an actual sentence. Don't worry if this is difficult or proving impossible. With practice, the more you listen to your mind, the more you hear, and the clearer the hearing becomes. And also, quite curiously, the more you sit and listen, the more your mind offers up to be heard, which can be quite interesting. But that's a topic for another time. For this practice, simply realize that these instances of internal mental talk are being heard in the same space of hearing as those external sounds, like the traffic outside, or the buzzing of your fridge, or the neighbor's terrible music. Granted, they will be heard at a much lower volume and with far less clarity, but they exist in the same space. I mean, you're not reading them, you are hearing them. And as your space of hearing has that spatial property whereby you can locate more or less accurately the sounds and appearances that arise in it, these instances of mental talk can be located also. You hear them somewhere, usually somewhere towards the center of the space, as it were, but not always. Attend, and then realize that each instance of mental talk that you do hear or notice is a moment of hearing. There is hearing going on and hearing being known. In the rest of this practice, we are going to start getting used to the idea of attending to our entire space of hearing, the external and the internal, all at once. To do this, we are going to note instances of hearing, whether they be of the external or the internal variety. And to facilitate this, we are going to label them. And so when you notice that your attention has landed on a sound in the world around you, or a different aspect of a sound, or has returned to a sound that it had attended to already, note this, by which I mean attend to that sound as closely and clearly as you can. See if you can locate it precisely. See if you can look at it so closely that the little vibrations that make it up become obvious. And then label it hearing, let it go and move on. When you notice that your attention has landed on an instance of mental talk or thought, note this. Bring all of your concentration power to that instance of internal hearing until it becomes clear rather than vague and shifting. Label it hearing. Let it go and move on. Pay special attention to where your mind is going, hearing outside or hearing inside. You're going to say your labels out loud, if you can. If you happen to be in a situation where this is not feasible, that's fine. Use your inside voice, but otherwise, spoken labels help a great deal. It also helps a great deal to work to a constant pace that isn't too fast so that you don't become overwhelmed by trying to note and label every sound and every thought which is quite impossible, and that isn't too slow, so that you don't drift off and indulge distractions. But find a pace that works for you. One noting and labeling every few seconds, or one noting and labeling per breath can work quite well. And keep the tone of your spoken labels even rather than reactive. I will demonstrate really quickly what this might sound like, and then you can take over. Hearing, 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 and so on. Before you go, remember, this is not a performance. Nobody's evaluating or judging you. You can't do this well or not well. So take note to actually pause and listen, and then note and label what there is, rather than trying to grab onto sounds or thoughts ahead of time just so you would have something to report when the time comes to note and label. All right? When you're ready, off you go. Notice the importance of being able to discern between the inside and the outside hearing that is going on. And notice how easily the two are confused. For example, remembering that there was a sound that you heard that you can now note and label is not a hearing of a sound. It's a hearing of mental talk, even if the sound itself was merely a second ago. This distinction, this clarity, really matters. Keep going. Attend closely and clearly to where your mind is when you come to note and label. Notice the tendency of your mind to wander to other spaces of sensory input, like seeing of mental images or feeling of physical or emotional body sensations. Notice the tendency of these spaces to become intertwined, such that hearing of external sounds becomes intertwined with the arising mental images, or hearing of mental talk becomes intertwined with arising emotional body sensations. Or notice the tendency of your mind to wander off on a completely unrelated tangent of daydreaming and fantasizing, worrying, and planning, all of which likely includes a certain amount of internal hearing, but also seeing and feeling. Bring as much concentration and clarity as you can to notice this. Disentangle these intertwining streams and keep bringing your mind back to the task at hand, which is to attend to your space of hearing, to attend to the arising appearances of external sound and internal mental talk. Along the way, you might find yourself bored or frustrated at how difficult or uncomfortable this whole listening thing is. Or, as you listen, some of the instances of mental talk may cause you disturbance, while others might be quite attractive, and you might be inclined to go for a ride. Notice that all of these experiences, boredom or frustration, or aversion or attraction in response to thoughts that may arise, are in part made of internal mental talk or thoughts, with other parts of seeing and feeling intertwined. See if you can guide your attention to focus on the auditory aspect. In the beginning, attending to your space of hearing in this way can be tricky. For some, it doesn't come easy. For others, it comes pretty naturally. This is fine. As you practice, as your concentration and clarity and equanimity develop, your hearing sharpens, both external and internal. Not only will you be able to hear more, you will be able to hear more clearly. You might actually be able to hear your thoughts properly, so you might know what they want to say, and then you can begin to work with them. Because even though for the moment we are not interested in the content of what it is that is going on in our space of hearing, what is it that we're hearing in the world outside? What is the content of the thoughts that we are hearing? We do not want to engage in those conversations right now. That content is important. But in order to work with it, we need to learn and practice listening. You've just done a fair bit of work, so take the last minute of this practice to do nothing. If your eyes are open, you can close them. You can stop tracking, stop noting, stop labeling. Breathe, relax. Don't move, and simply sit for a minute. It may seem somewhat silly to be paying so much attention to learning to discern between external and internal hearing, between hearing of the world around us and hearing of our own mental talk. It may seem to you that this distinction is fairly obvious. After all, you are pretty sure you can clearly tell what it is that you're hearing outside and what it is that you're hearing inside. Except, of course, this isn't always the case. You can think back to the last uncomfortable conversation you may have had with someone, or a conflict you may have tried to talk through with a loved one. Are you sure you were hearing exactly what they said, free from the filter of your internal mental talk? I shouldn't think so. Beyond that, notice how often in the course of any given day, our priorities call for our attention to be preferentially focused on external hearing at the expense of internal hearing, or vice versa. Listening to something somebody you care about is trying to tell you is a good example. In many such cases, external hearing is what matters more. Yet often, we are more entangled with our internal hearing, our opinions about what it is that they're saying, our interpretations, and what it is that we are going to say in response. This distinction is a matter of focus, and that is what you're training here. So it's a very good idea to do this practice often and many, many times. It is also a very good idea to make your own version and do that many, many times. And it is an exceptionally good idea to take this practice with you into your day every day. And every once in a while, such as when you're in a conversation with someone, anyone, notice, where is your mind going? Inside, outside? And where do you need it to be? Have fun with it, and as always, we will build from here.